I'm going to start this morning by reading from Proverbs chapter 2 and proposing to read the first 15 verses. This is the recommendation that the pursuit of wisdom brings security. My son, if you will receive my words and treasure my commandments within you, make your ear attentive to wisdom, incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry for discernment, lift your voice for understanding. If you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will discern the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice, and he preserves the way of his godly ones. Then you will discern righteousness and justice and equity and every good course. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will guard you, understanding will watch over you, to deliver you from the way of evil, from the man who speaks perverse things, from those who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who delight in doing evil and rejoice in the perversity of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. And so really this little passage divides humanity in a sense into those who are seeking for God, for his justice and mercy and his love and his way, from those who have rejected God and gone off into the world looking for their own path, satisfying to themselves rather than satisfying God and trying to please God. And when we seek God, we are delivered from the path of evil. And so that's very much what Rex was talking about in his sermon this morning. It echoes a lot of what Proverbs has said. And Proverbs is not intended to be an absolute answer for everything, but these are the ways of righteousness. These are the ways of truth and of enlightenment, the knowledge of God. And those who try to do things their own way are really elevating their egos above God's knowledge. They refuse to be subservient to God. Instead, they want to serve themselves. This is what I want to do. Nobody is going to tell me that I cannot do this. And that elevates the person's own ego above everything else, above wisdom. And really, you see that serving God is the good way to live, and a way which is, in the truest sense, more satisfactory to self. It gives more enjoyment in life as we try to serve other people. Going the egotist way is very selfish, and it doesn't care about what anybody else thinks or how anybody else behaves or how anybody else prospers. And so an egotist is going to cause trouble wherever he is. And mostly, although he doesn't realize this at the beginning, he's causing trouble for himself, because he will inevitably clash with other egotists. He won't clash with Christians because they're just trying to be helpful and trying to be examples of what is right. We're studying righteousness this morning, probably one of the most important things that we could study. And righteousness is what is right or just or normal. The Hebrew word for righteousness is tzedek, and it's rightness or justness. And it's something that we look for in rulers and kings and judges, that they will do what is right. They will make right decisions about what people should have been doing, weren't doing, and are now to be punished for very often. It's to keep people whose egos are so rampant that they will harm or destroy anybody with whom they come in contact. And that's a dangerous position to be in. It's as if there's a lion in the street and he's going to destroy whatever he can catch. And lions can be very fast. You can't outrun them. And so righteousness is a cry for discernment. If you look for righteousness, if you try and discern what it is, then you will find what it is. And the book of Proverbs has a lot to say about righteousness, and we're going to look at as many verses concerning that as possible. It's important when you're studying Proverbs to notice that these two-line poems or poetic statements usually contrast one thing with another. And so it's in that contrast that you discover most clearly what is righteous. We're told in Proverbs 4, verse 18, that the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn. I don't know about you, but my sleep patterns are destroyed. I don't sleep like I used to when I was a lot younger. I wake at the most unearthly hours. I often start looking at things or studying things at around about 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning. It's not convenient, it's not the best time to study, but somehow my mind has awoken me and said, okay, we need to think about this. And even though I protest and say, not now, it says, but we've got it. So it's that kind of awakening to think that sometimes causes us to overthink a lot of things. And it's overthinking things that leads us into all kinds of messes. So we would prefer to see the light of dawn and wake up and say, you know, I'm refreshed in my sleep. It's good to be up. Let's go about the day's work or the day's business. So the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn. And it's contrasted with the way of the wicked, which is like darkness. And so we have this division between light and dark, and we know who came to be the light of the world. And so that's where our thinking should lie, in what our Lord and Savior has said. We're going to turn over to Proverbs chapter 10, and we'll be looking at several chapters from 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on, because they all have a lot to say about the blessings of righteousness. What is righteous? When you hear the word righteous, very often you connect it with the term self-righteous. And nobody really admires a self-righteous person but himself. When he tries to tell you how righteous he is, then it becomes annoying. Who does he think he is that he knows righteousness more than everyone else. And you begin to look at his life, and very often it doesn't always reveal the kind of righteousness that he believes he possesses. And so as we look in Proverbs chapter 10 and look at the blessings of righteousness, verse 2 tells us, well, I'll start verse 1 and 2. A wise son makes a father glad, a foolish son is a grief to his mother. Ill-gotten gains do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. And so the opposite of the righteous is the person who is what? Pardon? Unrighteous, but what is his life habit? What kind of life does he lead? Well, it says ill-gotten gains, which means what? He's probably heavily invested in the stock market. He may actually be a thief. And so that doesn't profit. Righteousness delivers from death. And so even though you gain a lot of money from some manipulative scheme or some robbery, armed robbery, that doesn't really profit. You think it does. So a life which isn't focused in righteousness is not a very rewarding life, even though people think it is. It's filled with anxieties that take away all the pleasure of the money that they've gained. And then in verse 3, the Lord will not allow the righteous to hunger, but he will reject the cravings of the wicked. And so even the wicked, who eventually falls on hard times because of his wickedness and craves for something, does not receive it. But the Lord will not allow the righteous to hunger. And this is one of the things that I've found, not to claim to be righteous, but trying to please the Lord. I've never had to go hungry in my life. But the cravings of the wicked, God is going to reject. Then in verse 6 it says, blessings are on the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. So those who are not living righteously tend to do what? To live how? Look at verse 6. What's the contrast with blessings are on the head of the righteous? Okay, so the wicked people live by violence. And so we contrast a life of blessings with a life of violence if you're not following God. And sometimes the violence is not as obvious, and certainly not to the person who's actually committing it. The violence might take the form of language that is harmful or hurtful to other people in order to gain money, gain prosperity. And so instead of gaining, they're actually losing, while those who live in a righteous way receive blessing. They're not seeking blessing, they're just seeking to live righteously. And so it's the focus of our life. And righteousness is not just some kind of piety. You know, I pray 3 times a day, I worship God every Lord's Day, I bring my Bible to church and we study it together and so on. That's a kind of a piety that I think earns me salvation, and that may not be the case. You may be doing that because that's what you're seeking, to be righteous, and you want to learn about it. But the dishonest person is not focused on that at all. And then in verse 7, The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will not. And so when you think of people that you know who've truly been righteous, not self-righteous, but righteous, you think about them and you think, it was good to know them. But the wicked people, you don't want to know. They have such a bad reputation, you don't even want to think about them and what they were doing. Then, skipping on to verse 11, the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. And so our mouth should produce a fountain of life. In other words, it brings things into view which are pleasant and which bless you. But the mouth of the wicked, even though they seem to be talking nicely to you, it really conceals violence because they have an eye on something that you possess. Often they have an eye on money. How can I make money? How can I make a sale to this person? And so they don't know you as a friend, they know you as a prospective contributor to their wealth. And verse 16, the wages of the righteous is life, the income of the wicked is punishment. What does that hint at? The wages of the righteous is life, the income of the wicked, punishment. The contrast is between life and death. But what kind of death? Punishment. So what does that really hint at? The end of life, the judgment, doesn't it? And so the wages of righteous is life. What kind of life is that? In view of what we're thinking about this verse. What kind of life? The righteous has lived a life, but how is that righteous life? What are its wages? What is the reward? What do you get from living a righteous life? You get life eternal. And that's the contrast he's making. Then verse 20 addresses the way we speak. Somebody read that for us.
The tongue of the just is as choice silver. The heart of the wicked is little worth.
Okay. So what does the tongue reveal? When we speak, what does that reveal? Reveals your heart. Okay. But how much is the heart of the wicked? What's its value? Little to nothing, right. And so what does that say about the kind of speech we need to practice as Christians, as believers in God, believers in Jesus?
We need to be mindful of what we say and how we say it.
Right. It needs to give a blessing to the other person of some kind. And how would you go about doing that? How is your everyday speech going to accomplish this? How will it be like choice silver? You've heard about the silver-tongued orator, have you? May have run across that. He's a person who, because he speaks, everybody feels blessed. Everybody is enjoying what they're hearing from the words of his mouth. And so there are many ways in which our speech actually hurts other people. And we don't always think about it. We did not intend to hurt. But instead of offering praise or even acknowledging that this was well done, we say, yeah, but I would have done it this way. What you're saying is, you didn't do it very well. We can speak to somebody who is older, and we do so in just a matter of fact and not a respectful way at all. What do they feel? What do the older people feel?
Well, you say they probably would feel disrespected or...
Yes, you feel disrespected. And this is one of the things that's pretty common today. And it arises because my ego feels I'm so superior to everyone else that I don't need to show any respect. Respect should come my way instead of going from me to the other. But regardless of my age or anything else in my nature, I need to do what? I need to be voicing things which come across to the other as silver, valuable, pleasant. And so I would say, or I would ask, how should I treat everybody else?
Well, the Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself, so you
Right.
treat him with love and respect.
Treat with love, treat with respect. Very often, somebody pointed out to me a long, long time ago, you know, we adults in the church, we look at the teens and the younger kids, and they just kind of, something that's in the way as we try to walk. They're running between people, and we don't even acknowledge them if they're only this high. And yet one day they will be leaders in the church. One day they will be outstanding teachers, perhaps, or evangelists, or whatever. But we never acknowledge them, so they feel, well, nobody in the church really cares about me. Why should I carry on going there? When I get older, I'm going to find a club where we're all mates, where we all enjoy each other's company. And so it's a good thing to acknowledge those younger than you. Not in a patronizing way, not, oh, you're doing right, kid, but just respect them, because they will be the future of the church.
Mel, what it's kind of like what you're saying too, is to give them and help them to see that they have value.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. They are valuable, because everyone is valuable.
Now, I like what we're in verse 20 that we just read, but I like when we back up to verse number 19 also about the things that we talk about coming out of our mouth, where when there are many words, transgression is unavoidable. He who restrains his lips is wise.
Yes,
I think that's very good instruction there too.
many words. You can talk yourself and others into all kinds of mischief or into problems. And restrain your lips doesn't mean you've got to be the big silent person who never says anything and just nods at other people. But you need to restrain in the sense of you need to keep your speech under control. And that's the hard thing to do. It's easy to say something and you see the other person flinch because you've hurt them, but it's too late. You didn't restrain your words, and so that has created a problem, and you can't get those words back. You may make a lot of excuses and try very hard, but somebody may resent you for those words for the rest of his life. And you may not even be aware of it, but it will come back to bite you because it will hinder what you're trying to do in the Lord's work particularly. Then in the next verse, 21, the lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of understanding. So again, you've got the righteous versus fools. The righteous are the people who are trying to do the right thing. They're not trying to look holier than anyone else. They're just trying to do the right thing. And they don't care whether anyone notices particularly. They're not doing it to be noticed. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to say at that time. But fools die for lack of understanding. So they don't really understand what's going on, and they jump in with a word which is sometimes the very worst thing that could be said. Verse 24, what the wicked fears will come upon him, but the desire of the righteous will be granted. So there's a contrast here. It's a contrast between the wicked and the righteous. But the wicked has fears. You sometimes don't pick up on that. The wicked plan. They plan to hurt somebody. They plan to steal things and so on. And we don't realize that there's fear attached to that. Because even the wicked have a what if. What if it goes wrong? What will we do? And it might lead to further violence. And what he fears very often will come upon him. What if we get caught? They usually do, often do. The desire of the righteous will be granted. And so it's because the righteous have righteous desires that these will be fulfilled. The wicked have wicked ambitions, and because that is so, they have fears, and those fears will come upon them. And then the next verse says, when the whirlwind passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous has an everlasting foundation. Because what is the wicked's foundation? It's his own ego. It's his own plans. The righteous is doing good because this is in obedience to God. And because of that, because this is founded on what God wants us, it is an everlasting foundation, and so will be achieved. And then verse 30, the righteous will never be shaken, but the wicked will not dwell in the land. And so the righteous foundations are based on God. But the wicked just have a foundation based on their ego and its demands, and those will not last. Verse 31, can I have a reader for that? I'm tired of my own voice.
The mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom, but the froward tongue shall be cut out.
Okay. Some of those words from Old English are a little bit difficult to understand. The froward tongue is the perverted tongue. And the mouth of the righteous flows with wisdom. And so righteousness, because it's seeking to do the right things and to uphold the right things, it flows with wisdom. The perverted tongue will be cut out. And so that tongue is of little value in the long term. They may think it has value short term, And then verse 32, the lips of the righteous bring forth what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked, what is perverted. And there is a lot of perversion. Perversion is doing almost the opposite of what is righteous. Then going on to chapter 11, verse 4, riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. There's an interesting contrast here. Why is it that riches do not profit in the day of wrath? When do riches profit? Remember, the day of wrath probably is an indication of judgment to come. And riches can sometimes profit in a day of wrath in our current life, in our life here. You know, judges are not above receiving bribes of one kind or another. They're in trouble if they get found out, but people think we can do things which will sway the judgment of the judge. And sometimes it will have an effect, but often it won't. And so riches do not profit in the day of wrath. Righteousness delivers from death. If you are doing the right thing, then you will not receive the sentence of death. And this is probably a reference to the day of judgment, when the whole of humanity will be standing before the judge. And if he has been righteous, the man will be delivered from death. Riches are going to have nothing to do with how the judge rules at that time. The righteousness of the blameless will smooth his way, but the wicked will fall by his own wickedness. I think that explains itself. Your wickedness, if you have wickedness, is going to trip you up. Nothing you can do about it. But your way, if you're righteous, will be smoothed. Verse 6, the righteousness of the upright will deliver them, but the treacherous will be caught by their own greed. And that shows you one of the characteristics of those who are ruled by their ego. The ego's outstandingly in charge of their lives, and it's their greed which is going to catch the treacherous person. But righteousness will deliver the possessor or the practicer of that. Let's skip down to verse 23. Little change of pace here. Somebody read that for us.
The desire of the righteous ends only in good, the expectation of the wicked in wrath.
Okay. It shows the interest of our life. What are we focusing on? We're not focusing on ourselves. If you're doing good, it's almost always for somebody else. And so when you're doing good for somebody else, then that is going to be a blessing to others, and will not bring any condemnation. But the expectation of the wicked is wrath. That's what he's looking for. And this is one of the things that we see in our world today. There's so much anger It's surprising that people are angry about so many things or become angry so often. Why are we in such an angry society? I think because a lot of people have chosen the way of wickedness, because that is expressed in anger, and the desire of the righteous is only good. A lot of people think they can achieve what they want by being angry. If I'm angry enough, you'll do what I say. If I'm angry enough, you'll fall in with my plans. But with the righteous, who only desire good, to those who are in the world, that's not attractive. Good isn't attractive. Being a goody two-shoes is a slur on you. You're just trying to suck up to others by being good. The wicked is trying to get his own way and trying to gain. And a good way of doing it is being angry. Verse 28, another reader.
He who trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like a green leaf.
Okay. Trust in riches. You trust in riches and being rich, that kind of fills your mind. What can I do? What can I do to make more? And because of that, your whole thought is on pleasing yourself in doing what you want, instead of trusting that God will reward those who are living righteously and will not allow them to suffer. Let's move on to the next chapter briefly. And look at verse 5. And can we have a reader for that? Okay. The thoughts of the righteous are just, the counsels of the wicked are deceitful. And so, again, this idea of the thoughts of the righteous are just. Righteousness is doing what is just and good and true. And so we're looking for truth. Truth is our objective. And we want to live according to truth. We want to help others to bring their lives into line with what is true and just. But the counsels of the wicked, they want to get ahead by how they can trick you into parting with your money. And that can be something ridiculously easy. Many people who want advice, and they seek the advice not of God and of the Word, but they seek the advice of spirits and cards and things of that nature. And they're easily fooled into believing that these can actually tell them and guide them as to their future. And so they fall into the hands of the wicked, and the wicked are deceitful. They will tell you what you want to hear for money. And so that's the contrast between the righteous, those who like what is right and good, and those who are deceitful. Interesting statement in verse 18.
There is that speaketh like the piercing of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health.
Okay. Tongue of the wise is health. Are you trying to bring health to other people? Remember, what you say and how you say it can bring a lot of health to other people. And we often want to praise those who take leading parts, and we enjoy them, we praise them, we encourage them, but there are a lot of moving parts even in our congregation as we worship on Sunday morning. It's not all about Rex. It's not all about those who lead in the Lord's Supper or other things like that. There are a lot of other moving parts, a lot of other people who do things. They're just here and they work and they do things. And we need to make an opportunity to thank them. Thank the people who get the microphones in place and turn everything on. Think of those who make up that table with all the bulletins and the communion cups and so on. There's a lot of work in that. Somebody has to fill those little baggies with communion cups. Somebody has to print out children's bulletins. And we never think to thank those who do those kind of things. We just take it for granted. They'll do it. Until one day somebody is taken sick at the last minute and we don't have those things on hand. And what we do is we don't recognize, oh, one of our hard workers is ill. It's just, why wasn't the job done? So be mindful of what other people are doing. We enjoy coffee. What about those who get it ready for us? And many other things like that. So we need to be appreciative of other people and what they're doing. I see, according to our clock up there, our time is up. So I believe in being prompt and letting you get out to collect your kids. And I do appreciate everybody being in the class, and I pray that your appreciation for wisdom literature is growing. Thank you.